Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for September 16th, 2025. We have two areas of interest now to track in the Atlantic, including Invest 92L, which has a very high likelihood of developing. And we can now officially say it seems like hurricane season is beginning to kick into full gear, as our title card says. I'm going to go over 92L. I'm also going to go over what other developments we could have in the MDR, but especially going to focus on 92L today, since that's the main topic of what is immediately most likely to form in the near-term future. And I'm also going to show you something very interesting off the southeast coast, and kind of explain to you why you don't need tropical development to still get tropical-like impacts, but I'll go over that in a moment. Let's start off with the National Hurricane Center homepage with 92L here in the Atlantic. It is at a 90-90 chance, so we are probably going to get this to develop in the next day or so as this continues here towards the northwest in the Atlantic. This is very, very close to developing, although it's still a pretty broad wave right now. But either way, I think it's still very likely it's probably going to develop and definitely be our next named storm here. And probably our next hurricane in the Atlantic, as all of the models are very much in agreement on. And then we have another area of interest here back towards the east. This is a wave that just came off the coast of Africa, and now the National Hurricane Center has marked it again, or not marked it again, but marked another wave here. And this is something that towards the end of this week, heading into next week, might potentially also develop. So we might have multiple storms here in the next week to keep track of, very much, once again, in keeping of us swinging full, or entering full swing, I should say, into the peak of the hurricane season. Sometimes I gotta figure out how I'm gonna say something, but you get what I mean. We are now truly entering the peak, I do believe. I mean, it's a little bit late. It's September 16th. We really should have development by now, but it looks like it's going to happen one way or another. And we have two areas of interest right now in the Atlantic to track. In the Eastern Pacific, we have Tropical Storm Mario, and we have Invest 96E. This is going to develop and probably become another storm off the coast of Mexico here, but I don't think there will be any direct impacts to Mexico, at least from what I've seen. Mario also will not directly impact Mexico, but it is bringing moisture into northwestern Mexico and once again into the southwest portions of the United States. And I'll go over the rainfall totals over the next week in just a little bit. But here are the current information from the National Hurricane Center. Maximum sustained winds at 45 miles per hour, minimum central pressure 1,004 millibars. So this is weakening, and actually let's start off with a satellite image of the Pacific to show you what we are tracking right now there, obviously with 96E, and then we have Mario here off the west coast of the Baja Peninsula, and you can see definitely weakening. No longer any more deep convection occurring with Mario. It's moving into those cooler sea surface temperatures that tend to be in the northern Pacific. So it's definitely feeling those effects. But you can see here that there is a field of moisture associated with Mario that's kind of being shoved here into northern Mexico. And eventually this is going to make its way into the southwestern United States. Happens very typically with these storms that, track just off the Mexican coastline, even if they don't bring direct impacts. And sometimes these storms still do, they would bring direct impacts by recurving into the Baja Peninsula, and then they bring lots of rainfall to northern Mexico and portions of the southern half, especially the southwest of the United States. But very typical of this time of year, and obviously over the next 7 days, you can see rainfall is expected over the southwestern portions of the United States, especially through California, as much as 1 inch to 2 inches in some areas of rainfall, and that's not a lot, but can still cause a nuisance. But I guess the good news is it's not a whole lot that we're going to have, lots of flooding issues, but still, we're at least going to have some moisture and rainfall here over the southwest portions of the United States, especially Southern California here, and especially lots of rainfall near the LA area. That's where I could tell by this graph that the rainfall totals are are at its peak, and then also scattered as well throughout the southwest portions of the United States. Also going to have a lot of rainfall off the coast of Florida here, and also quite a bit of rainfall in the mid-Atlantic, especially Virginia, and I'm actually going to go over why that is in just a moment, so stay tuned. But let's take a satellite shot of the Atlantic right now, and just to get an idea of what are the general areas that we are tracking. We have Invest 92L here in the central Atlantic. Obviously, you could tell very large wave, and you could tell that it is an invest and it's on the verge of developing because it does have a very kind of shrimpy, consolidating, tropical cyclonish look, if you know what I mean. And it is trying to consolidate, but it is very big. And some of that is going to come to its detriment because, as I'll show you in a little bit, there still is some dry air to the northwest of it that this is going to have to battle. And clearly, it is starting to take in some dry air. And as you can see, we don't have as much deep convection with this system right now. But unlike other past invests, especially if you remember 91L from about a week or two ago, I think this still will probably develop, and I'll show you the models for that in a little bit. But then you can see we also have quite a bit of convective activity in general throughout the Atlantic. Pretty active tropical wave here, it seems like, just approaching the northern Antilles. Also probably a tropical wave or some sort of trough here, producing lots of convection in the northwestern Caribbean. But then I want to draw your attention to just off the mid-Atlantic and Virginia coast. You can see a very interesting looking feature here, and I'm actually going to zoom in on it. And it's definitely a very interesting feature, producing convection. There also is some sort of low-level trough of some sort, and this to a lot of people, they do say it does kind of look like somewhat of a subtropical system in the making, although you could definitely tell it's not necessarily a subtropical system, but it's a very interesting system nonetheless. And I'll actually show you a radar picture of this system, and you can see here just off the Virginia coast, almost kind of like an eye feature that you have here. So it is a very interesting system nonetheless, and the GFS and the Euro and some models were actually showing some sort of low pressure kind of consolidating off the East Coast as we went on into this week, and I guess this area is that. But regardless, as I mentioned, there's going to be lots of heavy rainfall, especially for Virginia, and there's definitely going to be some gusty winds with this storm too. So I do want to point that out, that even though we do not have necessarily a subtropical or tropical system by designation, does not mean that we cannot get those kind of impacts, and that is going to be the case here in Virginia over the next several days. So I wanted to point that out. And maybe this was trying to become a subtropical system, just fell short. It really doesn't matter though, because again, the point that I'm trying to bring to you is that we don't need an actually designated subtropical or tropical storm to necessarily get those kind of impacts. So please keep that in mind. And then I want to show you an 850 millibar vorticity map of the Atlantic. And you can see actually both of our areas here, 92L, which does have quite a bit of decent vorticity with it. So it's trying to consolidate. It's, trying to get itself together, but still a little bit broad right now. And that's going to be the situation with it over the next several days, at least as we head towards the end of the week. It's going to be broad for a little while. Again, I'll show you in the next picture here. Going to deal with dry air. Actually, I think the next picture is the wind shears. Am I right? Yeah. Yeah, so the next picture is the wind shear, and I'll go over a little bit in depth on that in a little bit. But I'm going to deal with shear a little bit, but especially dry air. And that's going to keep it broad for a few days, but eventually, as I'll show you with the models towards the end, it's going to consolidate and probably become a hurricane here as it turns north and into the open Atlantic, although maybe Bermuda might still have to watch out for the system. But you could also see our area here just off the North Carolina, Virginia coastline, and again, has a pretty solid vorticity signature. Definitely will bring tropical and subtropical like impacts to the Virginia coasts. But I guess, conditions were not favorable enough that it wasn't able to fully become a subtropical system. But once again, does not mean we won't get those kind of impacts here along the Virginia, North Carolina area over the next several days. And again, just want to bring you back to the Weather Prediction Center. Will be some rainfall here. Looks like 2, maybe 3 inches of rain in some areas. And that's not crazy, but again, it's a nuisance. It probably will bring impacts, and it will impact your life, even if this will not become a tropical or fully subtropical system. And wind shear wise across the Atlantic, well, first of all, you can see here probably one of the reasons why I'm not talking about this being a tropical system or subtropical system. Very high wind shear off the mid-Atlantic coast. I'd imagine, though, if it was lower, once again, maybe this might have actually been able to develop. But also here in the MDR, and this is a little bit tricky because 92L is very much embedded within what we like to call an upper-level anticyclone, meaning that it is embedded in an upper-level high, meaning that we're able to have really good outflow above the system. So this is embedded within that upper-level anticyclone. This is helping the storm to ventilate and breathe, but there is very strong wind shear to the north, and it will probably bring some effect to 92L, especially because, again, as I just showed you with satellite, and you can even see on the very blurry satellite picture here, 92L is very, very broad, so it will have to deal with that wind shear. And going to the mid-level water vapor, you can very clearly see here all of the mid-level dry air to the north, and it's trying to make its way in. You can kind of see some of these dry air pockets beginning to slowly seep into 92L, and again, with its upper-level anticyclone, maybe it's going to be able to hold off against the dry air enough that it'll try to develop convection and centralize a little bit more over the next several days, and we probably won't get a complete and total collapse of the system like we saw with our other waves several weeks ago. Again, 91L. Always bringing up 91L because that really was quite an incredible collapse from the models showing a hurricane, potentially increasingly a hurricane threat for the islands, but then suddenly one day just absolutely fell apart and suddenly we were not even tracking anything anymore. Not going to get that with 92L, but the one big issue, at least for the next several days in terms of inhibiting it, will be the wind shear, and then especially here on the mid-level water vapor, the dry air. And the dry air has really been a consistent feature of this hurricane season, which is why we really not have had much development at all leading up to now. But could we be potentially finally changing that here over the next several days with this invest area? We'll see. But as I'll show you here on the 12Z GFS, let's see what the models have today. You can see here, first of all, very pronounced vorticity signature right off the mid-Atlantic coast. And again, if this had more favorable conditions, wouldn't be shocked at all if this did, become a subtropical or tropical storm here briefly. But will not, but still going to be a pretty nuisance system and drops quite a bit of rain here. And actually seems like it stalls out a little bit for a day or so over Virginia. So you can imagine that will be a nuisance, and it will bring lots of rain and potentially some flooding to Virginia. And then here in the MDR, we see that this vorticity signature here slowly consolidates, kind of remains somewhat broad, and struggles to really become potent for a few days here as we head towards the end of the week with 92L. And that's probably once again because of dry air and shear inhibiting development a little bit. But then notice as we start getting towards the end of the week, and we head into early next week, suddenly 92L blossoms, and GFS actually shows some pretty quick intensification. And then let's pause it here at 7 days out. That's definitely a bona fide hurricane here, just southeast of Bermuda. So, I'm saying that we're always talking about how this will more than likely be an out-to-sea system. Maybe it's not going to be fully out to sea after all, because obviously Bermuda will have to deal with this storm, and just zooming it out a little bit more, kind of extending it a little bit further to hour 180, which is just over 7 days. You can see passes very, very, very close to Bermuda. So maybe Bermuda might actually have to watch and see what happens with 92L. And then hour 168, you can see here another area trying to get going in the MDR, and this one actually consolidates pretty quickly. So we'll see if that ends up happening, and we'll see if maybe this is the time once again that hurricane season is finally kicking into high gear. And then just to close out, I do want to show you the European, and I'm only showing the EC fast right now because this is up to the latest model run of the European, but the full 360-hour European run not out yet. That takes a little bit longer to load, but I do want to show you here on the European. Again, same situation with the GFS, although timing is slightly different, but they show the same thing. We definitely get some development here in the next 2 to 3 days, but especially once we get towards the end of the week, that's when this really begins to blossom. And this is probably a potent hurricane here, and luckily for the European, especially for Bermuda, if you're in Bermuda, you would want the European to happen, because 92L goes well to the east of Bermuda and then just turns out to sea and then just goes northward after that. But they also do have here the signals. You could see these very interesting vorticity pockets here in the MDR, in line once again with the MDR, with the GFS, maybe not as strong as the GFS, but there is a signal for at least a strong tropical wave as we head into next week that we're going to have to watch for in the MDR here. And obviously we have that marked on the National Hurricane Center, so we have quite a bit to be watching here over the next week. And we're going to see what happens. We're going to see if hurricane season is finally kicking into full gear, but I think it is. And looks like we're going to get a hurricane. We're going to get something else to develop. Definitely starting to see activity begin to ramp up quite a bit in the Atlantic. And it was only a matter of time before it was going to happen. And now we are dealing with it beginning as we speak. With that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw today. And if you did, as I always say, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I'm going to be continuing to do these videos every single day, so you'll be able to get an update just about every day, especially as we have multiple areas to track now in the Atlantic, so please make sure to stay tuned for that. But in the meanwhile, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll be back with more tomorrow. See you then.